Hi guys, welcome to the day 3 of Flutter Forward. My name is Mohit, and in the previous session, we looked at some of the basic widgets in Flutter. And in this session, basically, we'll move forward with looking at what are stateful widgets. And at the end of the session, we'll make an app which looks something like this. So let me give you an overview of this app. So basically, this app responds to like the size of your screen. So if the screen is large enough, it will expand this navigation rail. And if your screen is a little small, then it will collapse the navigation rails. Apart from that, this is an app which generates word pairs, which you can use for your startup as an example. So whenever you click next, a new name pair or a word pair is generated. And apart from that, you can hit this like button and it will go onto your favorites. So as you keep adding them to the list, they will come here in this favorites tab. Okay, as you can see, there are two tabs here. One is home tab and the next is favorites tab. So basically, through this tutorial, you'll learn the basics of Flutter, and we'll continue learning the basics as we did in the last session. You'll learn about how you can create layouts. You'll see how you can connect these buttons to actual functioning. You can learn how to keep your Flutter code organized. So basically, we'll uh, modularize our code. We'll basically extract widgets which are independent in their functionality and their looks, so that we can modify our code later. Apart from that, you'll see how to make your app responsive, so how you can adapt your app according to various screen sizes, and you'll see how you can use material design in general. Okay, so overall theming and font size, all of that you'll learn in this session. Okay, then, so without further ado, let's get on to with the slides. I hope the slides are visible. Can anyone just confirm?
Yeah, they are possible.
Okay, so the slides are visible. Yeah, so as I said, the application generates some cool sounding names, such uh, as you can see, there are some examples, and the user can ask for next name and favorite the current one. Also, they can review the list of favorited names on a separate page. So let's code the application, and I would ask you to basically open up any of the IDE, so either Android Studio or Visual Code. Okay, so let me just present my screen right here. Okay, So is the Visual Studio Code visible? Anyone confirm? Okay. Okay, so let's move on. This was the final code. I'll share it as a GitHub repository at the end of the session. But for now, what we'll do is we'll not waste our time basically running the basic layout that we learned in the last class, and you can just refer to the last session. What I'm going to do is providing you with a starter code that you can use to get started quickly. Okay, so I'll remove all of this, and you can see there is a GitHub link that I'm going to provide. So let me just share the screen. So this would be the starter code that you will use. What I'll do is I'll just copy all of this. Okay, I've copied it, and now I'm going back to Visual Studio Code. Here I'll paste all of this, and in the start you'll notice that you see some errors, right? So what happens is the packages are not added by default. Or I'll do one thing, I'll create a new project. Okay, so for creating a new project, you can just press Ctrl Shift P and write Flutter new project. Okay, now in the template section, select the application and select a folder in which you want to create your new Flutter app. So I'll name my Flutter app. For example, I'll name it Namer Flutter. Okay, ignore this for now. And as you can see, Flutter does all the heavy lifting and creates all the boilerplate code for you. Yeah, I think there is some problem with this. I'll create a new app again. Yeah, so it's creating my app right now. And as you can see, it gives you the basic counter app, which is a default app generated by Flutter as soon as you run your Flutter run command, Flutter create command, sorry. Now I'll remove all of this and paste the starter code that I gave you. Okay. I'll save this, and as you can see, there are some errors in our application right now. So that is because we haven't yet added our packages. So we have two packages which we would be using in today's session. The first one is English words. So we don't want to play with strings right now. All we want is a pair of words. So for that, I have used this English words package. Apart from that, we use Provider, which is a very famous and Flutter recommended state management tool. So in the last class, we learned about what is a state and what is state management. So what will happen if you want to, you have a widget tree, you have a deep widget tree, you have 3 or 4 levels, and you want to control the state of the app with the lowest level to the highest level. So basically, you need to notify the widgets that something has updated. So that is controlled by a stateful widget. But it becomes very tedious when you use a simple stateful widget everywhere. For example, you will need to pass your state 2 or 3 levels down and create a constructor for every level. So that is not very ideal. And it is because of that reason we use provider. So how you can add provider, open your terminal And here you can just type Flutter pub add and the name of your package you are trying to add. So firstly, I'll add English words. So as you can see, it just gets the package if you are connected to the internet, and it will refresh the main.dart file. And as you can see, the error which was appearing right here moments before has disappeared. Similarly, you can type flutter pub add provider, and it will add provider to your application. Okay, so now we are good to go. Let us see what is the current state of this app with the starter code and what we will improve on. So it takes a little time, maybe a minute or two before the app gets built. And by the way, you can select your target device by clicking this toolbar here, and it will give you a list of all your connected devices. So that's the beauty of Flutter. You can run your app on any device with the help of a single code base. Okay. So as you can see, this is our app right here. Not particularly very beautiful. In fact, it is barely readable. Okay. So it does not respond to the sizes of screens, and the main thing that we want is the word pair which is generated here. That is also not very visible. So what we'll do is we'll improve the design of this application. Just a minute, let me share my slides. Yeah. So what we'll do is currently the app is looking something like this. We will improve the app from looking like this to something like this. And for that, we need to go through a couple of steps. So first, we need to add a button right here. Okay. So I'll go back to my Visual Studio Code. Okay. Um, as you can see, there is no button right here which asks for generating a new pair, new word pair. Okay. So what we'll do is inside our column right here in the scaffold. So inside the scaffold, there is a column. Inside the column, we can just add an elevated button right here. So in the last class, we looked at various types of buttons. So namely icon button, text button, and elevated button. So in this case, we are using an elevated button. And now inside the child, we'll just add a text. It says next for generating the new word pair. Okay, a tip that I would like to give is always add trailing commas within your attributes in whatever widget you use. Basically, they improve readability. So as you can see, the trailing bracket has gone to the next line, and yeah, it basically improves the readability of your code. So now as you can see, there is a small button in our application. So this is the next button, but it doesn't do anything right now. Okay. When I click on next, it does not update this word pair right here. The reason for that is we have used a stateless widget. So if we go on in our code and add a print statement whenever this button is clicked, it will print that statement in our console. But if we update something on the UI, okay, if we update the text widget, then it will not be reflected here. Okay, and I told you the reason for that is we have used a stateless widget. So stateless widget does not update basically the UI with respect to all the values. Okay, and for that we have to use a stateful widget. Okay, let's go back into Visual Studio Code. Okay, now let me just add a print statement right here so that we can see whenever the button is being clicked. So I'll just print here button click. I'll save this and open up the console. So now I know you can't see the app right now, but I'm pressing the next button, and as you can see, the Flutter console gives the output button click, and it this badge corresponds to the number of time I have basically pressed the button. So it increases as many times I press the button. Okay. Uh, Apart from this, let us explore the app a little more. So as you can see, right now my app is a stateless widget, and inside that we have a build method. So that build method returns a change notifier provider. So this is a part of the provider package that we have used inside our app right here, and it is returning a material app. So the child of this is a material app, and this material app returns home as my home page. Okay, so this widget right here. Inside that there is another build method, and it has a scaffold inside which there is a column with two text and a button. Okay, so what I'm going to do right now is in the my app state class, which extends the change notifier. It's okay if you are not able to understand what is a change notifier or what is a change notifier provider right now. I'll clarify all of them when I get to explaining what is provider. So right now I am going to create a method void get next. So what it will basically do is update our current word pair. So there is a variable in the my app state class named current, which gives you a random word pair. So this word pair comes from our English words library, as you can see. So in the get next method, I'm going to say current is equal to word pair dot random. Whenever I call the get next method, it will update the current variable inside the my app state class. And apart from this, I am also going to call a special method named notify listeners. So now let us understand what notify listeners does. So notify listeners basically tells every listener who is listening to any changes to be alert and rebuild the UI. Okay. So this comes from the foundation package, and as you can see, there is a change notifier provider in our application right here, and there is a change notifier. So this change notifier is basically notifying all the listeners in the application or in the app, which is basically the widget tree, to see what is their current values and what change has been taken place. Accordingly, all the listeners can rebuild their UI and reflect the changes. Okay, so now let us save this and I'll share the app window. Okay, let me reload the application once. And as you can see, right now also it does not do anything. So what is the error right here? Just a minute. Are you able to see the code right now? I don't know, there was some glitch with the screens. Yeah, zoom the code. Yeah. Is the code visible now? Okay, cool. Yeah. So what we have done is we have made a getNext method which reassigns the current with a new random word pair. And it also calls the notify listeners, which is a method of change notifier. So change notifier basically ensures that anyone who is watching a state is notified and they can rebuild their state accordingly or rebuild their UI accordingly. Okay. Now let us work on making the user interface a little prettier because it's not particularly beautiful right now. The main thing which we want to see isn't really popping out, and let us highlight it a bit, little more. Okay. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this text right here inside a card. Okay. But first, let me give it a padding. Okay. What I'll do is I'll press Control dot. I'll say wrap with a widget, and I'll wrap it with padding. Inside the padding, as you can see, it is giving an error right now. So it says the named parameter padding is required. What I'll do is I'll give it some padding. Okay. Let us give it a padding of 20. So we learned in the last session that the way of giving a padding is through edge insets, and after that you can choose either only if you want to give it padding in one direction, but all, or dot from left, top, right, bottom. So I'll give it a padding of 20 on all the sides. So as you can see, the word right here is separated from the top text widget and the bottom word widget with a padding of 20. Okay. Now let us extract this widget. So I'll again press Control dot and or Command dot on if you are on Mac and select Extract widget. Now it asks me for a widget name. So here I'll give it a name of Big Card. Okay. So as you can see, the widget is extracted right now, and now you can work on your widget independently. Okay. Now, uh, I'll wrap the padding with yet another widget card. Now, if I save this, you can see that our name right here appears in a beautiful little card, and we can further customize this by giving this card some color. Okay, so in the build method, I'll create a new variable theme. Okay, so theme would be responsible for giving this card some color. So I'll create a variable theme which takes class a constructor theme.off, and inside that I'm going to pass context. Apart from this, inside the card, I'll tell it color theme dot color scheme dot primary. What it will do is basically this theme is taking the theme of its context. So the context is right here, and through the context, it will extract the primary color scheme. So if you scroll up, you can see we have used a color scheme from seed. So here it is mentioned that it is using a color scheme of deep orange. So let me save this right here. Now, as you can see, the color of this card changes. Okay. Now, what if I change this color? Let me keep it as blue and let me save it. As you can see, the card has changed. So we made a change right here in the build method, and the changes were reflected down in the big card widget. Okay. So through this, you can get a central way by which you can control your theming. Okay. You don't have to change your theming at every point in the app. You can just define a color scheme in the theme data, and from that you can extract all the colors that you want. Okay, let's move ahead, and now what I'll do is I'll make this text a little prettier. Okay, so to make this text prettier, I'll change the style of the text we can see here. Okay, so we are going to give this text a style. But before that, moving on to the lines that we discussed before, if you want to have a central way by which you can change your theming, you can declare some variable. For example, I'll declare a variable style, and I'll initialize that to the value of theme dot text theme dot display medium dot copy with. So you don't need to worry about all the code that I'm writing here. You will learn this code by a little practice. For now, you can remember the syntax of this code. Okay, and inside the color, I'll give it theme dot color scheme dot on primary. What is on primary? On primary basically tells uh, this style variable that you have to choose a color which uh, suits basically the text color which is to be displayed on a primary color. So our primary color was deep orange, and as you can imagine, judging from the app we have right here, if we would have chosen deep orange, let us revert this back to deep orange. Let me save it. As you can see, going by the contrast, you could have imagined that it will suit if this text right here is being displayed in white color. So what I'll do is to this text, I'll give it a style, and inside the style, I'll give it the style variable that we declared. So as you can see, this automatically takes the white color and the proper font size. So we don't have to do all of that with ourselves. Flutter does all the heavy lifting for us. But right now, also, the app is not particularly great because the a random idea is a little small and the widgets are being displayed on the top right. We want them to be on the center of our screen. So in the last class, we had a look how you can center basically all the widgets. Either you can use the main axis alignment, and you can also use the center widget that Flutter conveniently provides to you. So firstly, I'm going to the column right here, and I'm wrapping that with a center. I've saved that. Now, as you can see, it comes in the middle, but right now it's on the top. What I'll do is I'll give the column a main axis alignment, or a main axis alignment of center. So what it will do is bring all these widgets to the center of the column. So if you remember correctly, the column has a main axis alignment running from the top to the bottom of the screen. So basically the y-axis. And if you change anything on the main axis alignment, it will arrange your widgets on the y-axis. So if I would have given it a main axis alignment of, for example, space between, and as you can see, the button goes to the bottom. This is the big card widget that we created, and the text goes to the top. So let us revert it back to center. That looks a little nice. And let us now move on to adding actual functionality to our application. Okay. So let us add another button. But before that, uh, if you saw my starting application, the app which I showed you in the start of this session, there was a like button here. So to implement that like button, we have to first create a list which stores all the word pairs which you have marked as favorite. So let us scroll to the my app state class. Yeah, right here. And inside that, I'll create a new variable favorite. Okay, so var favorites abo, and it will be a list of type word pair. Okay, right now it's an empty list at the start of the application, and it will grow as we add favorite word pairs. Now below this, I'll create a method which toggles the current favorite which is being displayed. So favorite returns nothing, but here it will be an if else block which will say if favorites dot contains the current word pair which is being displayed, then you have to toggle that. Okay, so you have to remove that from the list. So favorites dot remove current. Okay? So that will remove the current word pair which is being displayed. Apart from that, there is also an else block which will add the current word pair. Okay, I hope the code is clear till now. We haven't made any breaking changes. And at the end, because the variables are being updated, I'll just notify all the listeners. Okay, so what we have done is we have added a new property to my app state called favorites, and this is initialized with an empty list right now. Apart from that, you also specified that the list can only contain word pairs of the type word pair. Okay, so these are something known as generics. If you have ever used Java, you know what generic is. So they basically restrict the types which can be stored in this variable. Okay, so they help make your app more secure, or you can say more robust. And Dart, being an intelligent programming language, refuses to run your app if you try to add anything other than a word pair to this list. Okay, so you'll get an error, a compile time error, which will say you have tried to add a non-word pair element to this list. Okay, now is the time to add a button, the like button, which we saw at the start of the session. So now I'll go to my column, and if you can imagine, if you need to add another button right here, the best widget to do so would be a row. Okay, so two buttons would be displayed right next to each other. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go right here inside, sorry, near this elevated button, click on it, and now you can click control dot and wrap this with a row. Okay, so it will wrap all the widgets that you have selected in a row. And now I'm going to add another widget, which is elevated button dot icon. So there was a little heart icon at the start of the button that can be achieved using elevated button dot icon. Okay, so inside this, I'm going to give it an empty function body. We'll see what it does. And in the icon, I'm going to give it an icon with icons dot favorite. So as you can see, the icon which you have selected is displayed right here in the gutter. So you can have a look to confirm. Now, uh, coming to the functionality, before that, one thing, if you notice the app, there was a varying icon depending upon if you have pressed the like button or not. So for that, in the my home page, I'll add a variable called icon. So that will decide what icon is displayed. Okay, so icon. Make sure to keep it inside the build method, or the changes would not be reflected. Okay, so inside this, I'm opening an if block with the app state dot favorites contains the pair that we are trying to access. Okay, so that pair is currently not defined here. So I'll just add it of this right now. This line I'll declare a pair is app state dot current. So if you remember, app state dot current was the word pair that we generated on each click of a button. Okay, so I've set this to current, and inside the icon, I'll now change the icon depending upon my pair. Okay, So right now icon is equal to icons dot favorite. And if it does not contain the pair, then else icon is equal to icons dot favorite border. So basically, if the word pair is present, it will give this you can say a filled icon, and if it's not, it will give it a border icon. As you can see, this is the preview right here. Okay, so now let us give it a label. So label is requiring a widget from us. So I'll give it a text widget. This text widget says like, okay, and let me add the trailing comma right here. I'll save it. And as you can see, the widgets are displayed in a row. Apart from that, to make it a little prettier, I'll add a sized box. In the last class, we also referred to what is a sized box. So size box is used to give a certain size between two widgets. So I'll give this a width of 10. I'll save it. As you can see, now the buttons are a little separated. And let me also center them. So the row will be having some main axis alignment inside the row. I'll give it main axis alignment. Center. Let us save it. And as you can see, the app is looking pretty much what we expected it in the start. Now, as you can see, we can click these apps and let us now add a navigation rail or some tabs, which you can call them, so the users can see what their favorites has been. So before that, we forgot to call the toggle favorite method we just created. So inside the elevated icon, I'll add app state dot toggle favorite, and inside the next elevated button, we'll call the get next method. Get next. Now, if I save this, you can see. Let me reload it. As you can see, if you click on the next button, it will give you the next word pair, and we haven't yet implemented the functionality to see all the favorite words that we have added. So we'll add that right now. So let's go. So to switch between the two screens, we obviously need to update the state of our app. And for that, we need to change the stateless widgets that we have created. So what I'll do is I'll split the my homepage into two separate widgets. So do one thing, go to the my homepage widget. So this is the my homepage widget. You need to delete all of the my homepage widget and copy another starter code that I have. I'll give you the GitHub gist link after the session. So just remove all of the my homepage and copy the code that I'll give you. So I'm just going to copy that code right here. Okay. So it's giving me an error. Okay. So I'll require a pair, and I'll create a word pair right here. Yeah. So same. I'll make this a final variable, and now it gives me an error. Okay. So we have successfully debugged our app. Let's see what error are we getting here. App state is required. We'll give it an app state. Yeah. Now if I save this, so as you can see now, we have added a navigation rail here. So if you go on to the stateless widget, my homepage, you can see there is a navigation rail. Right now, if we increase the size of our app, it will always be collapsed because in the extended parameter, we have given it a value of false. If I change it to true, then you'll see it is always expanded. But we don't want that. We want it to dynamically change as the size of our screens vary. Okay. So right now I'll revert it again to false. So now what I'll do is I'll change the my homepage widget to a stateful widget. Okay, so this is the first time we are dealing with something known as stateful widgets. I'll save this. In fact, I'll reload this once to be sure. And what it does is basically it creates something known as a state. So as you can see, there is a state of the type my homepage with the name of underscore my homepage state created here. So this is being assigned to a create state. Sorry, this is returned by a create state method, which basically creates the state of your application every time some changes are there, and you call the set state function. Okay, so the set state function is responsible for basically rebuilding your UI whenever there is some change. What I'll do right now is firstly we need to make sure that when this button is clicked, the app changes its states and displays the favorites list. And apart from that, we also need to make sure that it displays the list of favorited words. Okay. So for handling the switching between the tabs, I'm going to add a variable to my state. Okay, so I'll go on to the underscore my homepage. By the way, this underscore is indicating that this is a private field. So if you create a class or any field, a leading underscore, then that indicates it's a private field, and you can't access that from other files of your application. Obviously, you would not need to change the contents of another app from uh, like a separate screen or a separate page. Okay, so I'll create a variable selected index which will handle the switching, and in the start I'll initialize it with 0. Okay, now in the selected index of the navigation rail, instead of 0 right here, I'll give it the variable we just created. Okay. Now whenever we change the destination, we need to update the state. What I'll do is I'll call the set state method here because the state of our application has changed and we need to rebuild the UI. So I'll save this. And now if I go on to my application, so you can see whenever I click on the heart icon, uh, a statement is printed, which is selected one. And when I click on 0, it goes back to printing selected 0. So the variables are updated right now. And all we need to do right now is just switch on the basis of our page. Okay. So just before returning the scaffold in the build method, I'll create a variable. It will define the page. And now I'll make use of the switch statement. So Mayuk conducted a class on Flutter, which covered the switch statement. Inside this, I'll pass the selected index variable. And if the case is 0, this is 0, I'll set the page. If the page equal to the generator page, I'll break through the switch statement. If the case is 1, I'll have to set the page as something random because we haven't yet implemented the favorites page. So right now I'm giving it a placeholder. So placeholder basically takes up the size of the screen and displays a cross, which is supposed to indicate unimplemented parts of your apps. I'll break it, and in the default, I'll say that there is some error. So I'll print that there is some error because the age cannot be any value other than 0 or 1. Okay. So there is an error. I'll this. Okay. So what we have done is we have declared a new page variable of the type widget, which will hold the widget which is supposed to be displayed on the screen. So now if I just go to my app, okay, there is some kind of error. I'll have a look. So in the state, I have declared, okay, selected index. Yeah. And into state, okay. Yeah. So as you can see, now the app switches between a placeholder and the generator that we had. Now all we need to do is implement responsiveness. So this navigation rail should collapse and expand on the basis of screen size. So what I'll do is I'll use a layout builder. So I mean, layout builder will be handy if you go on and pursue Flutter for a little more time. But right now, what we are going to do is we are going to wrap our scaffold with a builder. Okay, so I'm wrapping it with a builder, and the type of builder that we need is a layout builder, right? Layout. It gave me an error that it can't be assigned to the parameter build context box constraint. Okay. So inside the arguments in the builder, I'll give it another variable, constraints. As you can see, now the error has gone away. And let us now replace the placeholder. But before that, let us change the constraints so that it dynamically changes according to the screen size. So here I'll say constraints dot max width greater than equal to 600. Basically, if the max, okay, max width, so if the max width is greater than equal to 600, this expression will return a value of true, which will extend the navigation rail that we have. So I'll just save this. And now if I expand this, you can see it changes according to the screen size. So if it is greater than 600, it will be expanded. If it is less than 600, this expression would return false and the navigation rail would collapse. Okay, now let us move on to implementing the final placeholder that we have here. So here it should display all the favorites that we have added. So it's time to fix that. Now what we'll do is we'll create a new widget named favorites page, and we'll show that instead of the placeholder that we have passed in right here. Okay. So let me create a new page or a new widget. So I'll do that right here. I'll create a stateless widget. So for creating a stateless widget, you can just type stls. And now I'll type the favorites page, the name of the widget that you want to create. Okay. Right now, I'll pass this here, favorites page. Now let us go on to implementing the favorites page. So just as we did earlier, in the build method, let us pass, let us create a new variable app state, which will handle the state of our application. So what it will do is it will watch all the changes that are happening in the my app state. So you can do that by using this method, and you can specify what type of state it will watch. So I'll give it a my app state. So it will watch any my app state that it finds while climbing up the widget tree, basically. Uh, Now, instead of a container, I have to return a list view. Okay, so I'll return a list view. And inside this list view, we'll have some children. So the children should be padding. So this is like basic UI stuff. I'll obviously give you the code and you can go through all of the code that I'm going to type here in the next 2 to 5 minutes. With a padding of 20. So 20. And for the padding, I'll give it a child. I will say text. It says you have a space. Now here I have to display the number of, you can say, the length of the favorites list. So for interpolation, as Mayuk covered in his session. You can type app state dot favorites dot length. Now favorites. Now what we have to do is to basically display all the favorites while exit the padding widget that I created here. And in the next line, I'll say for. So this is a iterator that I'm using. We have coded in Java before. You must be familiar with it. So every pair in appstate.favorite, we have to return a list type. Okay. So we are basically iterating through our list that we have here. So what we'll do is we'll display a list type. And inside the list style, we'll have a leading icon, which will say icons dot favorite. Okay. And apart from this, I'll give it a title. Title would be text pair dot lowercase. Or if you want, you can also display it as a camel case. So dot as camel case. Camel case is the one which you only capitalize the first words of your first letter of your word. Okay, so it's giving me an error right now. Have I done something wrong? Or you see this? Or, okay, yeah. So if you have an iterator and one statement or a widget, you can ignore the curly braces. So now if I save this, go to my app, go to any random word pair, click on this button, you can see that appears right here. So yeah, guys, that is all for this session. I hope you like this session, and in the next session onwards, Netra will be taking over. He'll teach you how you can use Firebase in your application, which is a backend as a service made by Google themselves. And I'll provide all the code that I've used in this session on the WhatsApp group. And yeah, that's all. Thank you for joining. I hope you guys are liking the session. We'll be having our inductions for GDSC Bitsgoa chapter soon. Make sure you sit in those inductions and be a part of GDSC. Yep, that's all. I hope you have a nice day. Bye.